I got nothing. The Invisible Man stars Elisabeth Moss as Cecilia Cass, a woman who escapes an abusive relationship and finds out her ex commits suicide shortly after. At first, it seems her life is getting back on track afterwards. Though when she feels an invisible force stalking her every night, she begins to suspect her ex is somehow behind this. Remember when we were supposed to get a cinematic universe of all of Universal's monster movies? Yeah, we were going to get updates of Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Dracula, all of them. And it was supposed to start with The Mummy in 2017 with Tom Cruise, and that turned out to be not so great. Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, and at this point, I think I'm good. Anyway, this was originally supposed to be part of that cinematic universe, but they scrapped that, but decided to move forward with this anyway as a standalone feature. And honestly, after seeing this, I am glad they did that. This was written and directed by Leigh Whannell, who is quickly becoming one of my new favorite filmmakers, especially for horror. He's been around for a while. He's written both the Saw movies and the Insidious movies, though he went up really high on my radar when he both wrote and directed Upgrade in 2018, which is by far one of the most underrated sci-fi/horror movies in recent memory. And he builds off that momentum to give us another great, if not better, mix of those two genres. So let's discuss. What makes a character like the Invisible Man so great for a horror movie is that it forces the filmmakers to find the horror in the things that are implied or we can't see. This isn't a movie that's filled with cheap jump scares and loud, obnoxious noises that you typically see in a horror movie because character's invisible. We do get a few of those moments like once or twice in the movie, but it's never in your face about it. Because the thing is, you never know when to expect something to happen. The film bears some similarities to Paranormal Activity in some ways. This film makes extensive use of wide shots, and it'll be something like Elisabeth Moss just standing outside, or she's cooking breakfast, and something moves oh so slightly behind her back or right after she walks away. Or sometimes nothing happens at all. This movie's never consistent, at least not at first, when it comes to seeing something moving in the background. But that's the point, and it keeps you on your toes. Sometimes Elisabeth Moss will just be in a room folding clothes or writing or whatever it is, and the camera will pan away before she walks over as well. And the way the camera stays on that one angle for a few seconds before she walks over implies something might be there. And now you're waiting for something to happen because that's what was done in the last scene. But nothing happens. And the fact it's so unpredictable like that is frightening. It's a movie that starts at a low intensity, but keeps cranking things up with each passing scene and building off that momentum that it just becomes non-stop. This is an extremely fast-paced movie. It's 2 hours, but it definitely did not feel like 2 hours at all. By 45 minutes or so, it becomes one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. It is super high energy. I had to fight to not close my eyes at certain points after a while. And the pacing is boosted by a great script. Not one scene goes to waste. Everything feels relevant and crucial to the plot, and that's a rarity. Every year there's always plenty of good or great movies, but only a handful have stories where it feels like you can't cut more than one scene out and everything falls apart. Elisabeth Moss is also a big reason as to why this movie works as great as it does. She is front and center of this movie, though luckily not to the detriment of all the other characters. Everyone else feels very fleshed out, and they're either naturally likable like Aldous Hodge as one of her closest friends, or there's someone you love to hate like Michael Dorman as the brother of the ex-boyfriend. But Elisabeth Moss is who truly carries this movie, and she is phenomenal. This is a very physical role for her, and she's constantly moving around, taking swings at this thing that she's not even sure is in the room with her. And she's also trying to not lose her mind in the process. So she'd always tackle each scene with such full force and high intensity. You also learn just enough about her character at the beginning that you find yourself easily sympathizing with her and always on her side. And that also has to do with the writing. Leigh Whannell does a great job taking this story and giving it a modern feel that gives it a lot of social relevance. Elisabeth Moss is the victim of this abusive relationship, and she's constantly controlled by this guy, to the point that when she first reveals it to her family, it is an utter shock, even though they've been together for so long. And even when she's being attacked by this invisible force, no matter what happens, it's hard for her to explain it to someone without being viewed as crazy. And each time she's attacked, it's constantly framed as if she's just losing her mind. So this shows, using horror elements, how this abusive man can have this power over someone and easily manipulate them, and the awful effects it has on them. So not only are you just rooting for Elisabeth Moss, but she's extremely relatable because this story has been seen in real life so many times. I mean, outside of the Invisible Man part. But still, it's really powerful storytelling. I was ready to call this movie borderline flawless, outside of like one or two predictable setups. The only thing is, while this movie is constantly engaging, there are a couple of inconsistencies at certain points in the movie that could have ended things very quickly. I won't spoil anything, but one involves the use of security footage. There's a scene where they're making a big deal out of reviewing security footage, and they do so to replay one scene to us, but they fail to do so for another scene that's easily way more important. And had they done so, this movie would have went down a completely different path. And while I can possibly make an argument to justify why they didn't do this, it's still really hard to ignore. There's another scene where an issue is presented and a character is alone, and they could have resolved everything had they just taken out their phone to record a video. And it's clear they had their phone on them because you see it going into the scene, and had they just taken their phone out, movie's over. I guess you can maybe chalk it up to having a poor lapse in judgment in the heat of the moment, but still. I'm in a weird position about this though, because while these moments are kind of a big deal, at the same time, they didn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie. Because literally every scene that would take place after these moments were still really engaging and really frightening. I was still having a really great time watching this movie, and these moments would only last for one scene. It's just that they're really crucial scenes, so they're kind of hard to ignore, so for some, this might detract from the entire experience. I love this movie. Despite some issues that might be a bigger deal for some, I otherwise had an absolute blast watching this. It's really well acted, especially with a great lead performance by Elisabeth Moss. Plus, it's absolutely terrifying and consistently engaging. Once it starts up, it never backs down. Plus, with a mostly smart screenplay that touches upon a lot of socially relevant themes, it proves that horror can be a lot more timely than one may think. The Invisible Man gets a 9 out of 10. The first few months of the year aren't always known for movies that make top 10 lists at the end of the year, but there's always at least one standout each year. And the last few years, it's always oddly in February, at least for me. Get Out in 2017, Black Panther in 2018, Fighting with My Family in 2019, and now this. So, yeah, go see this. So let me know, did you see The Invisible Man, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did the scares work for you? Did you enjoy Elisabeth Moss's performance? And what was one of your favorite horror movies in the last few years? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.